Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the I Want to Work For You podcast. Today we got the special tech edition. Look, if you know anything about me, I've been in the tech world for almost 2 decades, building software companies, doing marketing and AI, you name it. And I love highlighting tech companies, especially startups and those kind of nearing the growth stage. I believe that a whole lot of job seekers should be looking to find their way to navigate into that tech environment, into that startup scene, even if you're not a programmer, even if you're a marketer, or an accountant, or a salesperson, or a support person. These jobs have not just the potential upside of working for somewhere cool, not just potential upside of working for some place that will pay you well, but more importantly, when an organization is growing and expanding, it means there's opportunities all over the place, both to grow up with the company as well as to migrate from one role into a different area of the business. So let's jump right in. Well, excellent. Well, let's jump in. Like, we got Cynthia here, Abigail's hanging out as well. And today we're going to talk about ASI, Autonomous Solutions, I'm guessing Incorporated, right?
Correct. You got it.
Yeah, super interesting company. Just as we were hopping on, you're like, I'm interviewing for hardware people to, kind of test turning your John Deere lawnmower into something that runs autonomously. So maybe like give us the elevator pitch on what ASI does, and we'll kind of get started from there.
Sure. So we're kind of this hidden gem in the hills of Cache Valley. So it's a small town called Minden. I don't even know what the population is, but it's probably less than 300 if I had to guess. And it all started with the dream of the CEO when he was going to college here at Utah State. And he was working on basically his senior project. And John Deere found it, and they've been a loyal customer for the last 25 years about being able to convert. I grew up on a farm in Oregon, so let me tell you, I dreamt about this as a child, and seeing actually somebody make it into reality. I just need somebody to figure out how to pull weeds. I used to do a lot of weeding in sugar beet fields and onion fields, and yeah, it was a lot of work, I'm not gonna lie. So anyway, Mel, he had this vision and worked on his senior project, converting and making basically agricultural equipment autonomous.
Right.
And so John Deere, like I said, has been a loyal customer. And we've had different markets now. So we have the mowing market, we have automotive. So instead of having to put people behind the wheel when they're testing out different like vehicle safety measures, such as like stopping on time or swerving and missing an object, instead of having to put somebody behind the wheel, let's just hook our hardware to your steering column, to your braking system, and have our software interface with it. And let's just make it autonomous so that we can make lives safe. Another industry market that we are in is the logistics. So instead of somebody having to go and reverse trailers, we have robotic arms that connect to a cab, and that cab is autonomous, and it interfaces with our software, and it can back up trailers into these different stalls.
So for the most part, is this like retrofitting, like you're building something to go on an existing vehicle, not
Yes,
building a brand new vehicle, right?
bingo, buddy. So it's any OEM, original equipment manufacturing, anything that they have out there. So what type of car do you drive?
I mean, clearly out the window is my Cybertruck. So
Are you serious?
yeah. Yeah. So I have actually I could stick it on my yeah. So I have a Cybertruck and I have a Model S. I'm probably like, oh gosh, I'm the right person to interview for this. I'm like
Oh my goodness.
250,000 miles on autopilot.
Wow.
So
Feel like
Wow.
we're best friends, but you don't know Ryan.
I used to commute from St. George to Lehigh or to Eagle Mountain to the applicant pro office up there like once a week.
Oh,
So that's like 600 miles round trip. And I think the Cybertruck's probably my fourth Tesla at this point.
okay.
And so, yeah. So I know
Okay.
exactly like,
Okay, so we
yeah.
get to speak geek together, right? Because
Yeah.
that's actually a language, speaking geek.
On the flip side, so I grew up on a farm too, just like you.
Okay, cool.
Only I grew up on a dairy farm.
Oh,
And
okay.
so in, Midway, Heber City, Utah,
Yes.
there's a dairy farm there that makes cheese and all that kind of stuff. Now they have 4 autonomous robots that milk the cows. Cows come in on demand, whenever they want to get milked. You know, there's a giant data model behind it of the schematics of the udder and the nipple placement on the udder so that it knows, hey, this is cow number 378. I know what to do with this. I mean, definitely
Wow.
massive technology changes in the agriculture industry, either from a shortage of labor for a long time, or with milking cows, it's something like 30 to 40% increase in milk production by allowing the cows to
Cows to determine.
self-service be milked. And so instead of twice a day like we used to do, a cow could come in 3 to 5 times all on its own, walk in, walk out. And yeah, so I know a
Cow makes
little bit
the
about what,
call.
huh?
The cow makes the call of when they want to be milked.
Yeah, it actually, yeah, even that, like, I mean, clearly your guys' stuff, I believe, is mostly driving, right? So some type, but we do have, I think we have a autonomous, it looks like a giant Roomba. Wasn't that the vacuum that goes around your house?
Yeah.
But literally like a giant Roomba that goes up and down the manger and pushes the hay in, because cows are not very good at not pushing the hay away from themselves with their nose, and then pretty soon it's too far to reach. And so this like a Roomba the size of 2 refrigerators runs up and down the manger and keeps pushing the hay in.
Yeah.
And
To piggyback on what you just said, like our kits and our software can interface with those trucks that feed the cows. Like you'll see it on one of our videos, and the feed's coming out in a chute, and it's just going right along and feeding and putting it there in the I don't even know what to call it because I didn't grow up on a dairy farm. What do you call it? Like a
manger.
Manger.
Yeah.
I was pulling out the baby Jesus story, but yeah, right there in the manger, and it can just, keep going. Then it knows when to stop, and it just does it autonomously. So
yeah, it is, and wildly expensive, but yeah, it is, as far as like, it's where the farms are at these days. I mean, certainly big corporate farms are that way, but even the little guys, I think they're milking maybe 300 cows up in Midway on the farm, and the robots do it and check their temperature. And I think on the dairy side, the big one that I don't know that they educate enough on is showing like who's in control is switched. So where the animal's in control, that's kind of an interesting dynamic in the way we think about animals and food production, that is like, oh, the cows want this.
Right.
Instead of like, oh, I'm walking out at 3 a.m. and waking them up and herding them in, forcing them to give their milk away, kind of a thing. Now you have this thing of like, wait a second, why would a cow want to go in there 5 times a day? They're choosing this thing. And so I definitely think, the other industries don't have that, but definitely in the dairy world, that's an interesting dynamic to kind of make the switch on. But
I have to send you guys.
Cows are happier.
yes,
There's this video of a little boy talking about John Deere and the new tractors, and I have to send it to you guys. It's the cutest thing ever. So I have it noted. I'm sending you guys that video.
Yeah, no.
So I would imagine, Cynthia, the fact that you guys are working on kind of really cool tech. I mean, clearly any kid growing up was like, oh, it'd be so awesome when cars drive themselves.
Yeah,
you have that I'm sure is a draw from just a talent side alone of like, everybody likes to work on something new and something cool. And clearly, like, whether it's SpaceX going to space, which there's an entire segment of the population that's like, I wanted to be an astronaut growing up. And then this like, oh, this is something we only dreamed of, a car that would drive itself kind of a thing. I would imagine that helps you guys draw talent, right?
Yes. So we are in the market of software developers, right? Trying to find software developers. So I used to be a manager at Amazon, and let me tell you, even though I wore the Amazon on my shirt, did everybody want to work for Amazon? Absolutely not. Not everybody did not want to work for Amazon. And when I started there, I thought, oh, everyone would want to work for Amazon. Why wouldn't you? It's a household name. You normally have big dollar signs behind your name if you work at Amazon, but that's not the case. Like some technology was cool and fascinating, and I did happen to work on teams that were robotics teams. But the industry, to answer your question, the industry is really tight. That we don't have enough software engineers out there in the industry right now. And it is hard. So once I tell somebody about ASI, they're very interested just because of the type of technology. And most of the time people are like, I've never heard of you before, you know, and that's normal. And so a lot of my recruiting is very active. I have to go out, I reach out to people on LinkedIn. It's very active recruiting and sourcing and finding those candidates, having a lot of phone calls with them. And so yes, once I have that call with the people, they're very interested. But before that, they don't even know of us, nor are they like, oh, is this just another recruiter reaching out to me? But when they find out the technology, then it seals the deal pretty quickly.
And how big are you guys? How many employees?
So we just actually yesterday, July 2nd, was a monumental day in history for ASI. So one of our markets was mining. We have a large mining customer over in Perth, Australia. So we actually have an office over there also. We just sold our mining market to our partner. So we had a partner that owned about 30% of ASI mining. So we sold all of that yesterday to them. And so we had a little bit over about 200 employees. And so now we're back to about 150 employees.
Gotcha. So you went, I know you did recruiting and some other stuff in HR before, but you were at ASI for a period of time and then at Amazon and then back to ASI, right?
Yes. How did you know these things?
Because I looked at you on LinkedIn. Come on, I'm a good podcast host. I did my research. And actually did my research and then fed it all into ChatGPT to give me a series of questions flowing here. But my point is like an interesting thing of like, you went from I'm recruiting for a small, like kind of unknown to everybody knows Amazon to back to a small unknown. And I would imagine that that changes not just who you recruit, but more importantly, like how you tell that story and how you get people attracted to you, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it's really interesting out there. Not everybody wants to work for a small company, you know, that there's a lot more bureaucracy, right? There's so many standard operating procedures you have to go through, a lot of service level agreements. Well, when you work for a smaller company, you are part of that decision-making process. Like the other day, I went to Delin and I was just like, I think we need to implement, a service level agreement. When candidates take an assessment, we need to have results back to them within 48 hours so they know where they stand. Boom, it was implemented. I presented it at our next corporate meeting saying, here's the procedure. We need to move forward and make it a good candidate experience. So
yeah, and I think what you meant to say was not everybody wants to work for a big company, right?
Correct.
But I do think that's and honestly, like a core focus for us is this idea. I think the world sets the stage that the bigger the company, the more the power, the more likely people want to work there. And then we get as employers into this kind of like we're chasing Goliath. We're trying to be like the big dogs. And so you look at the big dog's job ad and you look at the big dog's benefits and you start trying to say, well, I guess we need to be like them. And unfortunately, like you'll never compete with them. You'll never have the same pay, the same benefits, same things. But we end up kind of like highlighting me too, you know, I don't want to use that phrase. We're just like them. We're also, right? Hey, yeah, we're just like them, but we pay less. And what gets lost in that, which is a terrible way to be like, it's like a gas station that's like, we have the same gas as the guy across the street, but we can't afford to lower our price. So you're just going to have to pay us more because you like us.
Right.
And that's a terrible like kind of situation. Instead of kind of owning that we're not like them, you know, we don't have the bureaucracy. You're not as specialized working on just this one little tiny sliver. You have a broader breadth of what you get to work on, or you get to see projects farther through to completion, or
exception to delivery.
Yeah. And I mean, clearly you've seen it firsthand. Like Amazon is insanely massive.
1.2 million employees.
Yeah, like that is not, I mean, they can't move. It's like a steering a wave runner, steering a boat, and steering a cruise ship, right?
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't move the same way, and it just doesn't. Yeah, so when it comes to, you know, how you guys attract people, like you said, hey, if I can get them on the phone,
yes,
then effectively you're saying I can make the case for why us. So like, what's that case? What is the why work for ASI besides like we're building really cool stuff?
First I find out what their wants are, like what's their driver. When I first get on the phone with somebody, I don't just do all the talking, I do the listening by asking intuitive questions to help them, and I'm working with engineers, and I can say this because my husband has his PhD in AI ML, and so I'm married to a geek. Walking through the process that sometimes engineers don't always think like, what really does make me happy? They're just kind of in the grind, right, all the time. And by asking them, like, what's your motivator? What's your why? And then I go from there of how I can meet their why at ASI. And I'll be totally 100% transparent with them. If I don't have a position, I'm not going to try to shove you into a position, because what you just told me right now, you have these talents and these skill sets, and I want you to be happy, and I want you to look for a career, not just a job. So if you're okay just holding on for a bit, let me keep you warm, and I'll find a position when it comes open, and I'll reach back out to you. Because a lot of engineers, they're already employed. It's just a matter of, I'm a little bored. I want something new. I mean, I'll just kind of casually start looking. That's normally the mindset that I come upon with engineers.
So what are some of those whys that you're like, if your why is this, or this, you might be a great fit I'm guessing a lot of that is culture and what work environment's like and what the flow looks like. So what are some of those whys that are a fit?
Of why to come to ASI? Yeah. So some of our mission values are transparency. This is the first place I have ever worked where each Tuesday when we have our different staff meetings, one of the Tuesdays, our CFO will get up and he talks all about the finances of ASI. I have never worked for a company where they are that transparent and open about this is where we stand. Right now we're at a dip because we haven't quite reached that production level yet. We're still in that R&D stage. And so I love the transparency that ASI has. And we also now started about 2 years ago an ESOP, so employee stock option program. So we already had profit sharing, but now you're really, really owners in it because you're owning part of the stock in our company. And so your work ethic and the value you put into this is being directly resulted by what type of return you receive.
Right. And so like, how do you clearly that's from a management and a drumbeat standpoint of we have these certain programs, right? As far as transparency and like authenticity and actually sharing what's going on beyond just their current role or they're zoomed in, which I'm assuming gives a level of like, I know why I do my job, not just what I'm supposed to do. I know how I impact not just me, right? I'm getting outside of that. How do you kind of activate and immerse new hires into that? How do you go from, hey, I just left, fill in the blank, I just left Facebook or Amazon or wherever it is, and now I'm in this totally different environment with its own culture and its own thing. How do you get somebody up to speed in that?
So onboarding, is that kind of the onboarding process? So we have our 30, 60, 90, right? And I'm not going to lie, like we definitely have our glitches of where we fall short at times too, because we are a smaller company. And because we are a smaller company, we can sometimes have a lot coming to us all at once because we do wear multiple hats at times, right? And so it's about maybe the words triaging of which fire or attention do I need to give first to that particular customer. So with the onboarding process, something that ASI really believes in is having that mentor, right? Like you have that mentor constantly that you can ask questions to that can help you and guide you also. And then also making sure during the interviewing process that we're really finding a natural fit for this person and also giving them a chance to do something that their other employer maybe didn't. I see that frequently. So like, Ryan, I'll see people say, I'm pigeonholed at my work. I'm an electrical engineer and I have such a niche market. This is all my company will allow me to do. But guess what? I did XYZ before I came to this company and I don't get to use any of those skill sets. So something at ASI that we're implementing is we're going and we're gathering what everybody's skill sets are. So we're like, whoa, Ryan used to work on a dairy farm. Well, guess what? ASI has a cow, and we would love somebody to milk the cow. And you're like, I love milking cows, but you only let me drive and ride on the autonomous, John Deere lawnmower or whatever. And you're like, I have that skill set. I want to actually do that. I find it like harmonizes me with Mother Nature or something. And so you get to go milk the cow. So we're making a spreadsheet to where we can go and put those people's skill sets. So we are tapping into those and letting them actually use those skill sets that we didn't know that they had, and making ASI more of a valuable place to work.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the new big thing is like skills-based hiring, right? Like,
Yes.
can we build an inventory of our skills of our team in order, and clearly, like usually it's talked about in the HR world from a, this is going to help us with the asset and help us allocate resources better. I don't generally think most people understand that from the employee side of things, that as an employee getting to stretch my legs in different areas, number one is very rewarding for a segment of employees, and more importantly, when you're smaller, it sets the tone. It's like it sets the tone of you're not always going to do the same thing, and
Right.
we're going to need you to fill in these other gaps, because sometimes we need a specialist 10 hours a week, and we need 30 hours a week to fill your schedule, and so it may not be just this one simple role. And I would imagine you're looking for that in the interview process. This
Yes.
like, I don't want to do just one thing all the time. I want to be able to, not just use things I've done before, but also kind of grow and expand and kind of morph into something more than what I was before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I see it frequently. Like, for example, in my husband, he was an embedded firmware engineer for 18 years. His company would not let him go to another particular position because they had a customer need, and my husband was the only person on that team. He had to do the project. And so he was like, fine, I'll go get my PhD, because I think that's the only way to get out of this. And so he did, and his work paid for it and everything. And now he's moved on to a different company. But that was the only way he felt like he could actually leave. And so then he earned it in AIML, and then the company didn't know what to do with them because they didn't understand AIML. They didn't understand what it was going to do for the future. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to go work for this little household name called Google. And it's a company that spun off from Google. And so that's what he does right now. So, yeah.
So how much of your, I guess your power, or your ability to recruit, do you think comes from this unique situation where you have fairly in-depth knowledge of the type of people you're hiring from knowing your husband?
Oh,
Because the
yeah.
average HR person wouldn't be able to go home at night and be like, hey, honey, so I got this problem at work with these very unique types of individuals. Because I've at Applicant Pro, I think at our max we were probably 30 programmers when I was there, and right now I think we probably have somewhere around 7 or 8, and they are different folks. They are not the same as us. Like they're just, brain works
we
different.
are normal. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, we're normal for the three of us, and if this was 3 engineers, we'd be weirdos. And to be honest, like our team, especially right now, is heavily from or in Monterrey, Mexico, and even engineers from Mexico are very different than
100%.
engineers here in the US. Like,
yeah, because we actually have testers. So we have software development. They're called SDET, software development engineer testers. And so we have a group also down in Mexico.
right.
And they test the software. And then we have our groups over in Australia. Australia is a major melting pot. And so we have lots of different cultures. And just coming from the mining industry, you have all these different cultures, and you have to figure out, how do we mesh together? Because engineering is its own culture in and of itself. And so there's a lot of dynamics and dichotomy between all of these different individuals. And I actually just had a meeting with our CEO yesterday, Mel, and we were talking about this, like, how do you mix all these cultures together, and how do you let people know what is acceptable and what is unacceptable, such as like yelling during the middle of a meeting, right? Like that, maybe that's acceptable in your world because you worked with cows growing up, but in my world, when you yell at me, I feel like I'm in trouble.
Right.
And so having to learn we need to treat everybody with respect, and that's an unacceptable behavior to do.
Yes.
But
And so it's interesting across jobs and across cultures, you end up with this, like, we're going to attract people who want our culture, but we're going to need to onboard them and kind of jump them in, which I want to come back to that mentor idea of how do you kind of like jump them into the gang that they're like, okay, I get it. I understand what is similar here to where I came from and what isn't similar, without taking away kind of some level of I'm my own person,
right.
but still getting this fairly consistent, hey, we're all on the same team and we all play different roles and we may have our different way of looking at it, but at the end of the day, like, we got to all head in the same direction.
Right. And this is actually something that we chatted about yesterday. Is I actually like it when people come from other backgrounds and they have other experiences. I think it adds a lot of value. Hiring, internally has its purpose too, and hiring externally has its purpose also. And it can kind of help us revamp and change some of our processes. At the end of the day, I think if we have to reiterate constantly what our mission and value is, right? And does that fit within our mission and value of what it is that we want to deliver for our future goal? And once, we can duke it out and we can talk about all these ideas. And at the end, it's not about you being right and it's not about me being right. It's about what is it that's driving ASI to reach their mission and their goal. And when you find that common ground, then it's easier to point forward and have
I think we like to call it like freestyling within the framework. So you're like, cool, we have this framework, we have a mission, we have these goals, we have certain, a roadmap that we're on. And we have ways that we approach these different things, but it's not like so detailed it takes all of your ability to be creative out of it. But there's core frameworks that you're like, hey, you should end up looking like this, and you can freestyle around all the edges of this. And as long as we have that kind of shared thing, we at least kind of know we'll get to the same result, or we'll get to something better. I like the one thing you brought up, which is probably like startup, a startup and growth company 101 of like, hey, there's generally not the right answer. And it's coming from, say, engineering or accounting and some of those more 1 and 0 worlds where it's like, there's a right answer. In the startup world, there's not a right answer. There's the best answer for right now for us, given what we're trying to do, which a lot of times is not what the engineer would have done if left to their own devices, because it's not just an engineering problem. It's a marketing problem and a growth problem and a greater vision problem of, hey, we're going to here. So what works at Tesla may not work here. And driving a tractor in a field is not the same as driving a car on the road. And so that one, like, especially we have to reiterate, is honestly harder for the executives probably to go, no, it's like you're telling this to children over and over and over again. And while it shouldn't be condescending, it will be constant. Constantly hitting, beating that drum of this is where we're headed and this is why we're headed there. And so, I love that.
Why. It's the why behind it.
And I think a lot bigger companies, people lose that. And a lot of smaller companies, the owners they feel like they've said it. Like, I already told you guys this. And you're like, 3 months ago. And you didn't relate it to this problem, and it needs to keep. And if you don't talk about it over and over and over like that, then as an employee, I might think it wasn't that important. It was just like, oh, we did this offsite this one time a year ago, and we talked about these things. But since you haven't talked about it since, and we don't measure it, and you don't like draw alignment to it, then maybe it was just like reading a book. Like, it was that week's fancy thing.
I see that.
So from a mentor standpoint, what's the difference for you guys between a mentor and a manager? Like, is the manager the mentor? Is it somebody different? Is it somebody on the team?
Somebody on the team. Yep. Somebody on the team that is a cohort. If we're talking, corporate organization with, the CEO at the top, but really it needs to be flipped, right? And the CEO should really be at the bottom, serving everybody up from that individual. It's somebody that is a mentor that is not the manager. The manager manages more of like the program or the project, making sure everyone's on track. But this is more of, hey, Ryan, I'm kind of stuck and I don't know how to come up with the solution for what data structure do I need to apply or algorithm to come up with a solution to solve this problem that I'm up against. And just being able to brainstorm and talk out loud with that individual, that's a mentor. And
but generally it's somebody who's farther along their path at ASI than me.
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Yeah. How long's that been in place?
Oh, I would say probably the last couple of years, because it was part of that onboarding. And here's a statistic I read the other day that 50% of people leave within the first 90 days. And companies forget, oh my goodness, that onboarding, for making sure that their computer works, that they have access to all of the programs that they need to. They have somebody that mentors them and helps them and sets them up for success, and not just putting them in an office saying, okay, here you go, buddy. Here's your laptop, welcome to ASI. So we had our learning, we had issues and we needed to grow. So definitely over the last couple of years since the first time I worked there, it wasn't quite.
I think that we as employers and as employees who've been with a company, let's say more than 6 to 12 months, don't remember what it was like and literally do not understand the plain anxiety behind, like, I'm leaving a place I know, even if I hate it.
Yes.
I'm leaving a completely known environment for a completely unknown environment. And if you sit me down for a day and just dump all that stuff on me, probably the least prepared to learn from a mental and emotional standpoint is day one, where I'm like, I don't even know where the bathroom's at. I'm not sure if I parked in the right place. I'm still questioning what I wore to work today and if it was right or wrong. I don't know, do we raise hands here? Or can I talk whenever I want? Who can I don't know any of these faces. I don't think the average employer understands the sheer amount of anxiety. And it's not, some people may be able to mask it better, and certain personality types may be able to deal with that chaos and unknown. But you can't build an onboarding process for the top 10% that are going to figure it out on their own. Or back to your thing, 50% leave at 90 days. It wasn't general. I don't think all of them did it because they hate the place. I think most of them do it because they didn't get over that anxiety hurdle. They didn't get properly acclimated to, and that takes, like, telling you my core values 10 times, not once, and showing you examples of it in 10 different ways. And if you think about a culture being similar to, joining a church or joining a club or moving to a new school or whatever those environments are like, and you look at that 90-day warm-up period that it takes to go, like, all right, I know people's faces and names. I know what they do. I know what's okay and what's not okay. I know when, just imagine going to meetings and, like, saying, I don't know what was talked about here. I'm not sure what those words mean.
Yes.
Like, it is just a very, very anxiety
vulnerable.
Oh yeah, 100% vulnerable.
Yeah. And so I really like what you said when you were talking. I heard you say over and over in my mind when I was interpreting it was, it's safe to be vulnerable with your mentor. You can ask your mentor,
that's why I asked who they were.
Yeah.
That's why I asked who they were, because your manager, it is not, I mean, even the best manager on earth, it is still, just from a human dynamic standpoint,
like a hierarchy.
Yeah. You don't want to ask a stupid question, so you don't ask it. You don't want to bother them and waste their time because they're busy. You don't want to ask those people those questions. And sure, you could ask a coworker, but you don't have permission.
Yeah, I love it.
In the same way. And so when you assign a manager, you're effectively saying, dear employee, you have permission to ask what you believe are dumb questions to this person, and smart questions, and all the questions, because it's not going to harm you.
Right. Yeah. No, I love it. No, that's perfect.
I love that setup. I think you'll see in the future, we'll get more bots playing that role of, can I ask dumb questions to a bot? And I think it'll do a couple different things for us, as far as even a bot is more approachable than another human. Like, I don't believe it's
there's no judgment.
And number two, from HR standpoint, because we build a lot of interactive bots, HR will be able to see the flow and be able to go, oh, that's interesting. People are asking this question. Like, we should proactively send the answer to everybody. Or what you end up with is kind of a scripted 90 days of like, I'm going to send you an email each day. We're going to highlight different stuff that kind of builds on it, not what you do in your job, but the why and the who we are and our mission and our vision and all that stuff. I think you'll see that HR will have more insights into those conversations, because right now you guys have a great structure with the mentorship, but in HR you may not be able to see what's being asked. And so
true.
Yeah, and so I really think long-term, the ability to say, oh, Joe asked this question. That's an interesting question. Here's the response that was given. I bet we should send that more anonymous question. Hey, one of our new hires asked this, and here's the answer, to all the new hires.
That is really good feedback.
Because you just figure that, if you didn't have the mentors, maybe 5 to 10% of people would ask their questions. And with the mentors, maybe you're now tipping at like 25%, depending on the mentor, probably, and how they pull questions from them versus waiting for them to ask them. But if you want to get to like 90%, then you need to predict the question and send the answer, even if they don't ask it, kind of a thing. And
I love it.
Yeah, I think it's one of the interesting things of you guys are an amazing place to work, clearly, or I wouldn't be talking to you. And like exciting and all this stuff. And I think you've done great. The mentoring thing, like I don't know that at Applicant Pro, we were 300 and we were bringing on like, oh man, 10 to 20 people a month.
Yeah.
Time. And we had some more scripted, but we didn't have the here's your mentor. But yeah, I think long-term that ends up much more scripted. So from a recruiting standpoint, where do most of your applicants come from? Are you proactively finding them, or how do you? So you're on LinkedIn, searching your target market, identifying them, doing direct message outreach.
Yes. Yep. 100%. And then also your new hires, aren't they good? They're a gold mine, right?
Oh yeah.
Your previous work, I don't even care if you know if they're looking or not, that you think would be a good fit here at ASI and that has that type of talent. That they're a great asset.
Yeah, I think that goes back to you called it 30, 60, 90, right? If the opportune time is like the sooner that person feels safe, feels grounded, feels like, oh, I got this place, I know what it is, the sooner you could ask them to go leave a review on Indeed or Glassdoor, and the sooner you could ask them for that referral. Because again, like the better they feel about the environment, we don't want to. Well, some of us maybe like misery loves company, and it's like, oh, this place is terrible. It'd be better with a friend.
Yeah.
Most of us are like, I shouldn't refer somebody to hop on the life raft unless I know the life raft is actually going to save us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So a lot of outbound, and I'm guessing heavy engineer recruiting is kind of your thing, right?
Yep. Yeah. I'm definitely technical. So you had asked me a question earlier about, my husband having that technical background, right? And he did a lot of my training for me, because before that I had been in the finance industry, I'd been in the healthcare industry, but I had never been in the tech industry. And Dylan reached out to me. She's like, can you find me an accountant? Sure, I can find you an accountant. No problem, So I found her an accountant, and then it was like, can you find me a software developer? And so I like look at these resumes. I'm like, I don't even know what C++. Is that a C hashtag? Is that a C pound sign? I don't even know these languages. What does this even mean? And like all these different frameworks. And I was like, Ruby, Rails, what are Ruby? Like it's just a totally different language, right? And so I would walk downstairs and I'd be like, can you tell me what this is? Because ChatGPT didn't exist back then. So then he'd tell me, and then I'd come back up and I'd write notes and have to just take all these notes down. And so it was definitely a team effort and learning how to be a technical recruiter.
Yeah, well, and I think that's kind of marketing 101 is like, you need to, what is it? The fifth habit, like seek first to understand, then be understood, right? And so you're like, you need to have an environment that, so I like my best world scenario is a casual environment where people are just hanging out, that is kind of like neutral territory.
Yeah.
where I can ask questions and engage with people to start building this kind of persona in my head. So for me with HR people, like 20 years ago, I was asked to build a hiring platform. And I'm like, I don't know any HR people. I think I'd maybe known one before I built Applicant Pro, like one or two. Didn't know any of them. And so I'd go to trade shows and hang out at the trade show booth and be like, hey, while other people are here selling, I just want to have these casual conversations where I can figure out like what makes HR people tick and what are their challenges and what are those pieces. And clearly I had an ulterior motive. I want to be able to sell to them, right? But from a recruiting standpoint, it's literally no different. You're selling your organization. And so I think you've got maybe a little secret superpower there of like, hey, honey, what does this mean? Or why are they talking this way? Or why is it that, I think it would do a lot of HR people a lot of good to get into some environments like that. And it may not be as easy. I did it with my own employees. So like when I was hiring, I would travel to trade shows. And so I'm sitting there with a marketing mom generally and a sales mom and handful of these people standing at the booth. I'm like, so like while we're sitting here hanging out or while we're at dinner, I need to know like what were you looking for in a job and why did you hate where you worked and what would, for instance, Applicant Pro does house cleaning. So we pay the house cleaning for our team. That came from me in a casual environment, having a casual conversation with some employees going, what's your pain? Like I hear that this is a huge pain for working moms. Is this true? What if I solved this? How would I roll it out? What would this need to look like? I think I probably had maybe 30 conversations about house cleaning before I rolled that benefit out.
Interesting.
Because I was just sitting there picking at this, like, is there a pain? What is the pain? How do they solve it now? How much like anxiety or agitation or frustration is that causing? Like I validated like, hey, what if I rolled this out? What if it worked this certain way? If I was choosing your cleaner, would that be offensive? Oh, okay, I need to build in the ability for you to pick your own cleaner and all those kind of things that, again, you have the ability to bounce that off of your engineer husband. I had the ability to bounce it off of my 5 people I was traveling with randomly, that I just don't know that, we get busy.
Yeah.
We get busy, we get in our flow. We're like, oh yeah, even the job ads, for me, one of the challenges for organizations such as yourself is this, like, if I have to make the pitch at the point of sale, the interview, a lot of times our ads aren't putting that out there. They're so structured and job description oriented. And maybe we recorded a couple of videos, but those are on our career site. So they're not on Indeed. So if I go to Indeed and, look at your job ad and it's just a description, I'm like, I don't know who this company is and I don't know what makes them different. And maybe I'll go read the reviews, but maybe I'll also just hit the back button.
Yeah.
And so a lot of maybe great people don't make it to the interview because we didn't convert them into an applicant. We just assumed that, if unemployment's really high, which it never is for engineers.
No.
They're just throwing a job ad out there will attract it, and Amazon doesn't do it. But again, Amazon doesn't need to do it because everybody knows Amazon.
Right.
And so I do think there's a lot of that. For us, it was, we would write our job ads and then give them to our employees, be like, hey, if I'd shown you this, would this have gotten you excited about applying? What questions would you have had? All that kind of stuff. And so, well, exciting. So what's the future look like? I'm guessing more engineers, right? What kind of engineers?
Definitely.
So you've got kind of hardware and software, is that right?
Bingo. Yep. And then we
those
have
are a little different.
all in between too, right? We have
Yeah.
project managers, product managers. We have testers that, are out in the field testing. We have systems engineers that go and connect all of our hardware and the software together for our customers. We have that. We have, obviously HR roles. We have, oh man.
Of those 150 employees, how many are in Cache Valley, which is Logan, Utah?
The majority, but when COVID hit, it changed the world, right? It was called the Great Resignation when people started quitting their jobs and they're like, I'll move, I'll go do what I want to, whatever, the Great Resignation. So now people are a little bit more willing to commute because they only have to be on site once a week. And
Okay.
so we have individuals that are in like the Weber County area, Davis County. We even have somebody that lives in Manti, and
Oh,
he
wow.
faithfully comes up each Tuesday.
Are
Uh,
you pulling people from Boise or Idaho Falls too?
no, we do have some that are by Idaho Falls, but not Boise. Boise is
Yeah.
just a little bit. We do have employees in Boise, but they moved during, that COVID time, and so they're kind of, I guess, grandfathered in, I guess you could say. But moving forward, everybody needs to be on site once a week. But we do have somebody from Shelley, Idaho.
Yeah, I think for a little while, Applicant Pro was like one of the top 5 engineer employers in Idaho Falls, which isn't
Oh.
saying much because it's Idaho Falls. But because we had this little pod of engineers sitting there, and actually they moved. So we had a CTO in Portland, just north of
Okay.
Portland in Washington, who moved to Idaho Falls, and then all the engineers followed him. It was like he got there and was like, it was either oh my gosh, there's so much land and it's cheap.
Yeah, yeah,
Was, oh my gosh, this is windy and terrible, but maybe if
yeah.
people lived here, it'd be better. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that's super. And then you said you've got a team or groups in Australia and then in Mexico as well, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Very
Yes.
cool.
Correct. Do you know how bad I want to start interviewing you? And I can't do that because you're interviewing me. I mean, I'm used to having,
Oh, you
as
can
Michael
ask me whatever
Scott
you
would
want. What?
Michael
Give me.
Scott would say that the turns have tabled, right? Instead of the tables have
Yeah.
turned. That's a Michael Scott line from The Office. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much. This was awesome. Like, I do think like you are the poster child organization of like, we're this awesome place to work, but we're unknown. Like, I love the mentoring thing.
Hidden gem.
Yeah, and that's really the goal of like us interviewing different people isn't like, oh my gosh, we're going to find an employer who's crushing it at everything.
Yeah.
It's more of finding, okay, mentoring. Mentors, not managers. That one right there, massive, huge takeaway of, okay, I see what that would be. I can see why there's a place for both of those.
Yeah.
Because I think if you get, enough of these small organizations together who each pull a best practice, you end up with, oh my gosh, we've
Love it.
always got something that
Yeah.
we're improving and iterating on.
100%.
And so, yeah, thank you so much. This was awesome, Cynthia.
Can I ask you a question in closing?
100%, whatever you want.
Okay. So what was the last book that you read, or maybe a podcast that you listened to that has helped you up your game a bit? And whether that's being more thinking strategically, whether that's thinking more, I don't know, creatively, what is it that has had the biggest impact lately in your life when it's come to learning from somebody else?
Sure. So right now I'm working on I'm reading this book called Drive, and it's a internal assessment. So clearly I've been in the HR space for a long time. And so behavioral assessments and personality assessments and the DISC and the Myers-Briggs and all those type of things, which some are great for hiring and some are, great for management or whatever. At Applicant Pro, there is nobody that I would even interview without giving them an assessment so that I could see kind of how they fit. And for us, it was because we were hiring all of these moms who were new to tech into a support role. So I need to be able to predict that they could do the job well, even though they've never done it. And then I wanted to predict the next hop. So for me, everybody was coming into support and then moving into sales or success or wherever. I didn't hire outside salespeople or that type of thing. But this drive assessment's interesting because it's like, what makes you feel important? Which is different than what's important to you.
Yeah.
And it's different than my personality. So for some people, it makes me feel important when I'm working on something creative, or it makes me feel important when I have structure or systems or whatever the case may be. We all kind of, it's very similar to the DISC in that it divides everybody up into kind of like 5 core areas. So I've been reading a book on that, and really to kind of test this, like, if I know what makes me feel important, then I know what kind of environment I want to create for myself. And if I know what makes you feel important, which is different than me, that goes back to that seek first to understand. And kind of, you're very good at knowing engineers are like X, and you could probably bucket them into 2 or 3 groups. And you're like, to this person, what makes them feel important is, providing for their family and being around. A lot of our engineers that moved to Idaho and that we were hiring was, I want to work 40 hours a week, not 80. I don't feel, a certain way about that. Whereas others, it might be being part of a team that's growing and working on new things or whatever. So that's my current book that I've been ripping through. And I mean, it's a mix of like a book that I'm reading that comes with some like webinars and some training on it to really be able to go, okay, this is an important, human connection thing, whether it's to sell you something or whether it's to mentor you or whether it's understanding what makes my manager feel important. Because as an employee, I should figure that one out.
Yeah. No, I love this.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's my one right now, which I don't read as much as I used to. I'm probably like 5,000 partial books at least in, maybe more than that. I consume a lot of information. But that one right there is the one, especially because we do a lot of job seeker mentoring. And so if we're trying to help a job seeker either figure out how to get a job or, figure out how to make up for, especially once they get hired, the lack of process and the lack of communication from their team where they're going to have to pull from their boss or their manager or whatever.
Yes.
That kind of like understanding the human condition gets lost a lot of times.
Yeah. No, I like that. No, I love it. I love it. Yeah, I just wanted to know what you were reading and
That's the
learning.
one I'm on right now. I mean, it's probably like anything. If you can at least get a few questions and categorize how we're the same or how we're different.
Yeah.
And that opens up, oh, I get why you react a certain way, or I get why you like a certain job, or I get why you're motivated or you're demotivated. Yeah.
No, I love it. No, that's something to definitely put in my toolbox.
How about you? What's your recent
I
book?
really liked Think Again.
Okay. I
Yeah.
haven't read that one.
That one is by I think his name's Adam Grant. He was one of the founders of Facebook.
Yeah, I know who Adam Grant is. Yeah.
And if you don't continue to think and evolve your company, you're going to fall behind, because who even knows of Kodak? When we were younger, I have no idea what your age is, but I'm just going to assume we're the same age. Kodak, that's all you bought was Kodak film, Kodak cameras, the long rectangular one. It was super cool, came in pink. And that was the cutting edge industry, And then there was Polaroid, but you had to be kind of rich to own a Polaroid because that film was kind of expensive, right? To shake and own. But you don't even hear of Kodak anymore. Kmart, don't even hear of Kmart. Say what?
I said it's coming back.
It is coming back just because retro's cool, because the 80s are cool right now in life, but they're not what they used to be. And it's because they didn't think again. They were not 5 steps ahead of their competitor. And they were basically almost took themselves out of the industry. Like IBM. IBM was a big player with computers back in the days. And so Adam Grant, just the way he thinks and has people change their thought process and to how to always stay ahead and be cutting edge.
Yeah, that's actually, so there's it's called the disruption cycle.
Yes.
And so it's a company thing, but you could apply the same thing to you as an individual. That, we as a company, we as individuals, we crave getting to the point where we feel confident, where we're an expert, where we know what we're doing, where it supposedly is going to get easier, right? So we crave this, we're doing all this work to figure out something new and figure out how to do it and kind of disrupt the status quo. And then we reach the part where we're running at full steam, and inertia says we keep doing that at that point.
Yes.
And if you're a company, it's called profitability. Like you're more profitable maintaining the status quo and just getting better at it, because as you guys clearly know, it's wildly expensive to disrupt, to do something new and different and unique. And as an individual, it's especially right now from the world of work is changing, and AI is definitely going to make some impacts here. We're really comfortable doing our job, and we were trained in the education system to memorize, and when we're memorized, we can raise our hand, we have the right answer and all this stuff. And when you start saying, well, what about stuff I don't know the answer to? That's uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's like, is it Chris Jansen? Is that who wrote the book about the disruptor?
Yep.
Yeah. No, good book.
And so as organizations, I think the next 3 to 5 years are going to be very disruptive, like internet kind of disruptive, like email kind of disruptive with generative AI. And as individuals, that same exact thing of, hey, you're really comfy doing your job the way you've done it. Unfortunately, the way you've done it isn't going to take you into the future. And I think the other book I've been reading is about discomfort. And I think those two kind of go together. I'd have to look
Is
it up.
that like that Brené Brown, like being vulnerable? Is that
No,
her?
this is like it's a study. I'll actually look it up really quick because I was listening to it on our ride home the other day from
The
Vegas.
best leaders are vulnerable.
It's The Comfort Crisis is the name of the book, and it's effectively saying, we as humans crave comfort because it's safe and it's known, but it's also our downfall when we get too comfortable. And so, like, I mean, clearly this morning I was in a 39-degree ice bath for 6 minutes, and that's a level of discomfort that is like, oh, that's not comfortable at all.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
forces me to be like, yes, but like, can I calm my brain down? Can I calm my breath down? Can I convince myself that I'm safe? Because if 200 years ago, if I'd fallen into 40 degrees of water, I would be dying. And inside of my head, it's programmed to be like, freak out, you're dying.
Fight or flight. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that same thing of like unknown at work, or, honestly, the number one thing, asking a question you feel stupid about, or doing something you've never done before at work that is scary and risky and those kind of things, we don't generally proactively go do that.
Because we are afraid of failure. That's what we tell ourselves. Yeah.
And so as organizations, we don't do that. As managers, we don't do that. As CEOs, we don't always do that. And as line level employees, we do that when we're told. But doing it proactively to be like, hey, every day I'm going to do something that scares me, or something that's out of my comfort zone, or in small organizations, it's where innovation comes from. And for individuals, they don't see it, but it's where new job opportunities come from. I've never gotten a job opportunity by doing the same thing I did before over and over again better. I might have made a little more money. I might have gotten a little more effective at it or efficient at it. But all my job opportunities came when I was like, oh, I should go learn about this web marketing thing, or learn about eBay, or learn about, HR software, ATS systems. Like, I'll say yes to a lot of stuff that I'm like, I have no idea how we're going to do that, but sure, it can't be that hard. And so, yeah, I think those two things of like getting outside of your comfort zone and picking some of these things and accepting that you're probably better off feeling at least out of your range a high percentage of the time, or at least a little percentage of the time. And the last one being that, like, nobody's going to do it. Nobody's going to force you to do it. And when you get forced, it's usually too late. Like Kodak. In fact, just to close, like, my kids were here at my house eating dinner, I think on Sunday, and they stopped in the garage and picked up, and there was like one of those disposable Kodak cameras literally sitting in the garage for some random reason. I'm like, holy crap, I haven't seen that forever. And it is super retro. Abigail knows this. Like, you got 30 pictures.
It was probably mine.
You got 30 shots at this, and you won't know if you got a good shot until later when it's developed. Like,
delayed gratification. You live in a world of wonder. Yeah.
Life was so much different.
Like, I had a phase where that was like my thing, was like the Kodak camera is just disposable. And I'm sure I still have some that I don't even have the film developed from. So
yeah. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, Cynthia. This has been a pleasure. So awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good one. Have a good 4th of July.
See ya.
Take care.
All right, Cynthia. So we'll slap this together and get you something to look at on it. And then, like I said, I'm gonna pull this and give you some employer value prop stuff that you're welcome to use. We can roll it into some AI. I do think I kind of reviewed your guys' jobs and your Indeed profile, and I think you might actually I'll send you over a video and give you some ideas. I think you could actually boost some of your free applicants if you make a few changes to it. So we'll spit out some content and send it your way. You're welcome to use it.
Love it.
But otherwise, thanks. This was awesome.
Yeah.
You were like,
you guys are fun.
Perfect first-time guest ever.
It was fun. Yeah.
Excellent. So that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to today's episode of our podcast. So I told you if you stuck around to the end, I would give you some ideas of, what we're all about and how I can help you. So number one, if you want to get job alerts from Refer, go over to refer.io. refer.io, and sign up for job alerts. You'll receive our newsletter, you'll receive job alerts, career advice, job seeker advice, etc. Number two, we've got some really cool AI tools over there. In fact, an entire studio of AI tools built just for job seekers to help you identify your career path, brainstorm what your options are, figure out how to set up job alerts, rewrite your resume, prepare for interviews, everything, all the way up to the point of helping you actually build your own mentors to help mentor you as a new hire at your new job. So go check out our AI tools. Trust me, you will love them. And along with those tools comes access to our coaching community where we actually coach you on how to get a better job, how to improve your chances of getting a job, how to do better at your job, and everything in between. Now, lastly, if you're an employer and you say, hey, we're a great place to work, but we don't get enough applicants, our employees love working for us, but for whatever reason, we don't get that many qualified people. They're not that excited. Most likely, you just are not very good at communicating why you're a great place to work out into the world via your job ads, via job boards. You may not be that great at getting your employees to amplify that message out there, and we're here to help. So if you want some help, if you want to be on our podcast, I would love to interview you. I'd love to show you what I would do if I was you to amplify your employer brand out there into the job seeker market. So shoot me an email, ryank@refer.io. You'll see it on the screen, and we'd love to chat. Otherwise, we'll catch you next time.